Did Donald Trump throw a reporter to the ground in Montana last night? Well, initial reports suggested that Greg Gianforte, he's a Republican running for an open House seat in the state, body slammed a reporter who tried to ask him a question at an event in Bozeman. A Fox News crew watched the whole thing happen. It was caught on audio tape.
You were waiting to make your decision about health care until you saw the bill and it just came out. And what you thought
we'll talk to you about that later.
Yeah, but there's not going to be time. I'm just curious if you have the
speak with Shane, please.
But you don't
sick and tired of you guys. The last time that came in here, you did the same thing. Get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. The last guy did the same thing. You were the Guardian?
Yes, and you just broke my glasses.
The last guy did the same damn thing.
You just body slammed me and broke my glasses.
And the man you just heard yelling was Gianforte. Authorities in Montana later charged him with misdemeanor assault. Open and shut case, right? Not by this morning. Despite the fact he was on an entirely different continent when the whole thing happened, Donald Trump somehow wound up the perpetrator in the retelling.
I don't think it's because a guy who's in office now has said very horrible things about reporters and has said that the reporters are the enemy of the American people.
No,
I think that has nothing to do with anything, that people feel that they can get away with it, because I don't believe that you actually believe that. There's no way you can't. There's no way you believe what you're saying if you don't think that's true.
There's so much hostility, frankly, to the press. A lot of it generated by, the Donald Trump rallies, frankly, and a lot of my colleagues faced the blowback from that. So this is kind of an extension of that.
You can draw a straight line from Republican candidates thinking that sort of behavior is okay when you have Donald Trump berating reporters throughout the entire campaign.
Come on. Here's what's actually true. Violence in politics is totally unacceptable, period. Never allowed. What the candidate did last night, Gianforte, was wrong, and Republicans ought to denounce him, as many have. That said, let's not lie to ourselves, or more precisely, don't let the people in charge lie to us. America does face the threat of political violence. It does not come, by and large, from baby boomer evangelicals in Montana, nor does it come from President Trump, whatever his flaws. The threat today comes from the progressive left and its growing enthusiasm for force as a political tool. Here's an example. Do you remember Lauren Duca? She's a writer for Teen Vogue who appeared on the show just before Christmas and delivered a performance so mindless and nasty that I lost control and snapped at her. I shouldn't have done it, but I did. For that moment alone, though, Duca became a progressive hero. Within a month, she was the subject of a predictably fawning New York Times profile. Last weekend, she gave the commencement address at a university, Bard College in Simon's Rock in Massachusetts. Now, we're happy to make people famous, even not very impressive 26-year-old bloggers like Lauren Duca. But you'd think someone on the Bard commencement committee would have actually read what Duca has written before hiring her, or maybe looked at her Twitter feed for a minute. It turns out when she's not barking on cable television or writing vapid pieces for teen magazines, Duca has yet another hobby: fantasizing about the deaths of her political enemies. Last week, Duca tweeted what she called, quote, a cute pic of Trump getting tired of winning. It showed an airplane going down in flames. Duca later bravely deleted the tweet, but fortunately, the internet never forgets. To one online critic, Duca wrote this, quote, I hope this person dies in a fire. That's civil discourse for you. So, of course, she gave the commencement address at an accredited four-year college. The left has gone insane. And if you don't believe it, check out what's been happening to non-liberal members of Congress lately. Last week, the FBI arrested a man for threatening Republican Congresswoman Martha McSally. Congresswoman Tom Garrett has received so many death threats, he now needs extra security when he does town hall meetings. Congressman David Kustoff literally was chased by a woman in her vehicle. Of course, there will always be loonies, a lot of them, in a country of 320 million people, and political movements should not be judged solely by their violent outliers. That's fair. And yet when every conservative speaker on campus is an excuse to riot, when every Trump rally is a chance to assault someone wearing a Make America Great Again hat, when your party's elder stateswoman is famous for celebrating racial violence during the L.A. riots, as Maxine Waters is, it's no longer a matter of outliers. It's something very different. What's a bigger sign of danger in America? One body-slamming politician knocking a journalist down? That's bad. Or this? We've even seen it on this show, on the set. Last week, we had a progressive activist called Kevin Zeese. And his only objection to violence in a long conversation, his only objection to violence in politics is that it might be ineffective. Watch this. Is that a legitimate tactic to smash windows?
That's not an effective tactic.
Is it legitimate, morally legitimate?
That's up to the people who organize it.
So it's okay. There are times when using violence in America.
I've never used violence. We've never advocated violence.
I'm asking you a philosophical question, which you're capable of answering.
I can't answer every question when violence is appropriate or not.
Yeah, by not answering, he answered. You get it. A few days before that, Monique Presley did not have a problem with Maxine Waters defending rioters in L.A. who nearly killed a truck driver only because of his skin color. She did not denounce the attack. On the contrary, she all but endorsed the attack. That puts her outside the pale. Endorsing violence that's the line, and she crossed it.
Right. Well, I don't know if we'd have our current president if that was the line. She has a right to say what she thinks.
Political parties exist to conduct politics, which is supposed to be conflict without bloodshed. That's the whole point. The moment those parties embrace violence, not just committing it, but also excusing it, condoning it, fantasizing about it, they are no longer political organizations. They're awfully close to militias. And the rest of us are definitely much closer to the breakdown of everything we cherish in this country. Violence is the bright line, and they're very close to crossing it. Danielle Ash is a radio show host, and she joins us now. I'd never defend this guy in Montana. He totally lost control of himself, hitting her. Come on now, stop that. But to act as if this represents the right and acceptable behavior among conservatives when the progressive left is literally setting fires is a total distortion of reality, from what I can tell.
Yes, Tucker, thank you for having me. And I completely agree with you in this instance. Absolutely. First off, you can believe two things simultaneously. Right. That Gianforte behaved wrongly. You can believe that. But you can also, Tucker, believe that the media, in some respects, is culpable. That the violent progressive left is, in some respects, culpable. I mean, let's keep this in mind. We're talking about the same media that has ignored the behavior and really underreported, and in some cases not reported at all, the violent behavior of many on the progressive left. This is the same media, Tucker, that promoted the hands up, don't shoot, that left many communities, including the communities in my hometown of St. Louis, actually burned to ash. This is a media right now, Tucker. You want to talk about violence. What about the story that Luke Rosiak at Daily Caller reported, how you had Debbie Wasserman Schultz threatening Capitol Police because they seized government computers in an ongoing scandal that should be really rocking every headline about these two IT staffers that hacked and were stealing government information. But yet we don't see that. Would we even be having this conversation about Greg Gianforte and the anger of so many people in America if media had done their job the past 10, 20 years, if they hadn't looked the other way at all of the violent actions that we have seen so many progressive leftists commit?
And celebrate. We interviewed a New York City councilman this week who endorsed the inclusion of a convicted terrorist, a guy who spent over 30 years in prison for armed robbery, for building explosives from the Puerto Rican separatist group FALN. And he's being honored at the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York City with the backing of the city council, including the head of the city council. Like, what? I don't remember living in a country like that, and yet that goes basically unremarked upon. And just to be totally clear, this is not an excuse for the lunatic behavior yesterday by that guy running for office in Montana, but it's an acknowledgement, okay, let's talk about violence. And it really is real.
Yeah, it is real. And we see it. Everyone wants to talk about President Trump, but let's discuss Tom Perez and his cussing crusade that he's been giving on so many different fundraisers. Let's talk for a moment about the California Democrat Convention, Tucker, just last weekend, where you had a number of Democrats on stage screaming expletive Trump and expletive Republicans, and that was cheered on and celebrated by the entire contingent of California Democrats. But yet they want to accuse everyone else of fomenting violence, of instigating violence, of violent rhetoric. Tucker, I have been seeing this. I know you've seen this too for over 10 years now. I get tired of it. And you know what? Middle America, America in general, is tired of it as well. I had so many people who called into my radio program today, Tucker, who said, you know what? Maybe the media deserves it because we're tired of being lied about. We're tired of being manipulated, and we're tired of them excusing awful things done to us in the name of partisan ideology. This is the point we are at because people hate media this badly.
Well, and I think they've earned a lot of that scorn for sure. But isn't it important
they've gone out and tried to ruin people's lives.
Oh, I've been on the receiving end. But isn't it important to say there is a significant difference between people who seek to debate and use reason in order to persuade and people who are willing to endorse the use of force to get others to obey? Like, those are two different worlds. And I, for one, would rather be and insist on being in one and not the other. And shouldn't conservatives say that? I mean, I get that people are annoying, but like,
absolutely,
wouldn't you rather be famous for like not hitting them?
Yeah, I think so. I think you would rather be so. And you and I've talked about this before. I mean, really, it's weak to think that you can convince someone with use of force. Ultimately, yes, it can be harder. It can be a lot more difficult to use reason and logic to appeal to hearts and minds. But that should be the ultimate goal, because are you really converting someone? Are you really persuading them if you omit their free will choice to agree with you?
Well, exactly. And we're going to try. Sometimes it is like beating your head against a wall. Dan, thanks a lot for coming on tonight.
Good to see you, Tucker. Thank you.